Hello and welcome to Dialogue. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is currently on a 5-day state visit to China, which is her first to, in her own words, actually relaunch bilateral ties with China. What issues are high on the agenda of Meloni's visit? How should the two countries navigate through the ever more complex geopolitical landscape and strengthen their cooperation? And what does the visit say about the future trajectory of China-EU relations? Join us for our discussion today, live from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Joining me today are Michele Geraci, former Undersecretary of State of the Ministry of Economic Development of Italy, Cui Hongjian, Professor with the Academy of Regional and Global Governance of Beijing Foreign Studies University, and Francesco Sisci, Senior Researcher at Renmin University of China. Welcome to Dialogue. So Hongjian, I will start with you. So basically, the visit was initiated, 3 days after the confirmation of the EU to impose extra tariffs on the Chinese EVs, exported to the European Union. And of course, this is the focus on the relationship between Italy and China. Prime Minister Meloni has met with the Chinese leaders, including President Xi Jinping and her Chinese counterpart, Premier Li Qiang. What do you make of her visit so far?
Firstly, as we know, it's her first visit by Prime Minister Meloni, especially since she take the power from Italy. But I think that it gives a very positive message to both sides, that both China and Italy, they try to continue their cooperation. Because as we know, even at the very beginning of this new government, a little bit, I think, a surprise or a little bit of shock, not only for partners and also for European Union, some other European countries, because as we know always, Madame Meloni and her party has been labeled as a so-called far right-wing party. But as we understand so far, I think the government and the Prime Minister herself did good job indeed. I think she is trying to, relaunch not only relations with China and also relations with the European Union, with other, as we know, European countries. So I think now, yes, on a political and a diplomatic level, it could give some more positive message for both sides. I think it shows that there will be some more confidence for both sides that China-Italy relations could be stable for maybe another several years. Another, I think, of course, very important issue is trade friction, as you mentioned. That now the tariff imposed by European Union on China's EV, some other. And also, as we know, Italian government play a little bit of negative role on this issue. So I think now it's time for both China and Italy to have a deep discussion on this issue. And as we know, that I think the purpose for Italian government is trying to, change this trade friction into a kind of maybe opportunity for both China and Italy to have some more cooperation on the green economy and also EV industry.
Okay, we will talk more on that part, obviously. Let me bring in Michele. So what's the public response to the visit by the Prime Minister Meloni, and how do you characterize her policy toward China?
She is very much anti-China. She wanted to boycott the Beijing Olympic opening ceremony. She sent an Italian Navy ship near Taiwan a few months ago. She exited the Belt and Road, which is a project of peace and development of infrastructure, which is very dear to President Xi. And she has given no reason for exiting this Belt and Road agreement. And so therefore, I think she is trying to navigate difficult waters, because I don't think she probably fully understands the extent of the damage that she has done to the relationship between Italy and China. She is, for example, raising issue about the trade deficit between Italy and China, thinking that this is a negative for our economy, but actually our imports of Chinese goods into Italy is very, very positive for our economy, because especially during these 4 years of COVID and war, buying goods from China has helped our manufacturing industry to function, because we need this continuity of the supply chain. And also, there's always a saying that Chinese goods are cheap, and that's good, because it's kept the inflation low in Italy while we were having this problem. So, the visit, is it good or bad? It is okay, it is good, but it is trying, and as she said herself, to reset, rejuvenate the relationship with China. Obviously, she knows that she has created some problem, and so she needs to fix it.
Right, Miguel, that's what I'm going to ask. She talked about relaunching cooperation with China. It gives you a sense that she understands, there are challenges. We need to somehow to start again and to focus on the real issues.
Why would she relaunch something that is successful? When I signed, or I didn't sign personally, but when I made Italy join the Belt and Road, I never said, we are relaunching the relationship. We always thought, and we said that we are improving the relationship from what Italy and China had done over the past few years, so adding a step. But we never said that we need to relaunch. Relaunching is an admission of a problem, and who created the problem? Her decisions.
But we can also say probably there's a spirit or sense of pragmatism in terms of conducting relationship between the two countries.
I would have, if I was her, I would have told President Xi these things. I said, listen, sorry about exiting the Belt and Road. I was busy with other important things. I didn't think too much. We are very open to reconsider it. Give us some reason why we should join, and we will look at it, because she needs to understand that the Belt and Road is not just something between Italy and China. It's not just about trade. She reduced the concept of BRI to trade between Italy and China. It's not. It is about two big countries, the two terminals of the ancient Silk Road, Italy and China, to join forces and work together to develop all of Asia, all of Africa, and other parts of the world. We're talking about 6 billion people of infrastructure, transport projects. So I think we need to understand the wide scope. This is the biggest infrastructure project of mankind, launched by President Xi in Kazakhstan 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And Meloni said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. It just does not look right. Even US pressure to exit is not enough, because I, as a junior minister, I did not feel any US pressure. If I, as a simple undersecretary of state, could have a big G7 country join the BRI, why would not a prime minister, who is 3 levels higher than me, not being able to just renew it? In fact, she didn't need to do anything. She would just need to just automatically extend it. She could have just done nothing, and Italy would have remained on the Belt and Road for another 5 years. But this is the key concept. It's about Asia and Africa, not just about Italy and China. And I think she needs to focus on that aspect that she may have missed while she's here in Beijing these days.
Right. Francesco, I wonder what's your insight, what's your observation of the current visit by the Prime Minister?
Well, I think it's a very complicated situation. It's not just bilateral. It was never bilateral. Italy is member of EU, is member of NATO, and as far as I know, is not thinking of withdrawing from NATO and withdrawing from EU, although this could be options that should be discussed by the Parliament if that was the case. Therefore, Italy has always the problem of balancing its relationship with China with other obligation and allies. Italy is also the cradle of Western civilization, therefore its position particularly sensitive because many many Western countries look at it. So whatever Italy does with China has an impact, has a global impact, directly and indirectly. Therefore, navigating this bilateral relation on the backdrop of this very complicated international situation is not easy. I think it is a major achievement that for China that Meloni came to Beijing in this moment. We have, right as Meloni was here in Tokyo, there was a meeting between the United States, Japan, and Korea about the security of Northeast Asia. And in Rome, there was a meeting about solving the Gaza conflict between Secret Service of America, Israel, Egypt, and Qatar. So therefore, it means that Italian allies were not so pleased with this visit. So the fact that she came, and she came for many days, it is quite significant. As for the rest, it is not just a bilateral issue, fortunately or unfortunately.
Yes, Hongjian, just following up on what Francesco has said, during the meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Meloni, President Xi talked about, the importance of unity in dealing with the changes and challenges around the world. And Meloni also said there is a growing insecurity at the international level. I quote, "I think that China is inevitably a very important interlocutor to address all these dynamics." So obviously both sides realize there's an important point for them to talk to each other, to exchange ideas about the ever-changing international landscape. I mean, that itself is helpful.
Yes, indeed. As we understand, this visit by Prime Minister of Italy, it could be another opportunity for both leaders, from China, from European countries, to exchange a wider vision, especially on the so huge geopolitical change. Now, in China, we say that it's a big change for 100 never seen. But on European side, they are talking about the so-called Zeitenwende. So I think now the question for both sides is perhaps we do have a similar, understanding about the upcoming, the change, also new world order. But now the question is, how could we get some more joint efforts to deal with all of these, challenges? Now, not only with geopolitical tensions and also some geo-economic tensions. So we need to, put everything together. We need to find out, the package for solutions. So I think now that's a value for this exchange. Undoubtedly, before this visit, there are a lot of, suspicions, even from China's side, on the Italian government, on its policy, on the Prime Minister understanding about China, some other. But if we look at this visit and the achievement, especially the meeting between two leaders, we can find out that China is as pragmatic as possible. China is willing to, get any kind of engagement and cooperation with any, partners, including Italy. So I think this pragmatic could be very, very important experience and also important message to European side. So no matter what happened in the past, we are looking forward. We are looking ahead. So I think that could be very important sense. But of course, now the question is, yes, complicated situation and a different understanding, even on some, issues, on some crisis, some other. But I don't think it important, because as we know, once we are working together, once we are trying to find out common solutions, we will, I think, achieve it. So I think that's the value and also the significance for this visit.
Francesco, so China has proved to be pragmatic, and forward-looking in terms of developing this bilateral relationship. And of course, you talk about it's a global situation there, but as important members of the international community, I mean, as long as some of them stick to engagement with each other, I mean that helps with the stability with the situation, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is for China very important, but also I think China should be careful not to, how to say, try to overplay this. The fact that Italy is willing to come is important, but the fact that the allies, Italian allies were, ostensibly displeased with the visit, it gives also the limits of Italian possible room for maneuver. That is, Italian came to China, apparently, without enough coordination with the allies. So Italy has to do its homework better and more, and I think China should be following this with great attention, and also try to, I would say, help Italy in its effort, because it's not something that can be done on its own. But it means that there is room for change, room for hope. I mean, we know that the situation around China is difficult. Possibly it is going to become more difficult, and it's crucial. I think it is very crucial that effort should be done taken to avoid an escalation and try to spin the situation in a more positive direction. Can it be possible? We need to be creative. We need a lot of imagination. We know that at least this government is willing. Italy in general is willing to help, but we have also to be realistic and not try to overplay it, because it's not going to be easy.
Pragmatic, but also cautious. Miguel, how does, as we said at the very beginning, 3 days after the confirmation of imposing tariffs on the Chinese EV makers, and then Meloni decided to visit China. So how does that visit fit into this large picture of China-EU relationship here?
Well, the China-EU relationship is also very, very tense because the European Commission, von der Leyen, has in the past declared China a systemic rival. So this is how the EU see the relationship with China. And I don't need to tell you I disagree with that. China is a competitor, yes, but it's a partner, and it's one of the biggest markets that we need to deal with in a nice and friendly way. So I think labeling something rival, systemic rival, is wrong. Now, on the back of this decision of labeling, of course, the EU now acts on its philosophy by imposing tariff. I think imposing tariff on EV vehicles from China also has a very little economic grounds, because this issue that China has overcapacity of electric vehicles, in a sense, is nothing else than just saying you produce more than you consume. But this is what every country does. Italy exports more than it consumes. We consume 100, we produce 200, and there are other 100 we export. So, saying overcapacity, it just means that country export. And by the way, China export to GDP has now reached very, very low level, around 19%. It is Italy and Germany that have a very high proportion of their economy coming from export. Now, the solution, if I was a Chinese company, would be to then invest into manufacturing into the EU, for example, in Turkey, in Hungary, which is part of the EU, or in Turkey that has a kind of a semi-free trade agreement with the EU. By doing that, any car made in Hungary, even by Chinese company BYD, would be an EU product and could therefore be circulated within the member states of the European Union with no tariff. So maybe this is an attempt to force China to invest and produce in Europe, therefore by boosting the local GDP. That would be maybe a smart choice. And we do know that a company like BYD could afford that and still make a profit and therefore have an access to a wider market. But I know there would be a second step, because we do know that even software, artificial intelligence that could be in the, let's say, Hungarian cars made by Chinese company could then be the subject of further scrutiny. So it would be very risky, and Chinese companies need to think carefully, because they're not just selling cars, they're selling hardware and software. Mm-hmm. And the next stage of the EU-China rivalry from the EU side could be on the data that you collect, because you see where people drive, what they do, right, etc. So I know it's a very sensitive topic as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Hongjian, despite all the tensions in terms of trade on the EV, of course, during the meetings between the leaders, they signed a 3-year action plan to implement past agreements and experiment with new forms of cooperation. Tell us more about that. What's it really about in the action plan? What kind of action we are expecting?
Yes, also, I think another very important background for this visit by Prime Minister of Italy is China just, especially CCP, just finished its very important meeting on this, I think it's a new round of opening up and reform for China. So I think it could be a very favorable environment for this cooperation between China and Italy, between China and European countries. Also, once China tried to, push forward its opening up and reform, certainly, which means that better and better market access for some European investment and also trade. So at the same time, also, this new plan or project between China and Italy, I think it gives a very big sense for this, new opening up and reform. I think Italy and Europe could be a very important destination for Chinese some new round of policy for opening up and reform. Another, I think, important background is, yes, our Italian friends mentioned that the withdrawal of Italy from the BRI, especially once the Prime Minister Meloni took the power. Even at that time, Italian government raised the issue is, once there is not a BRI cooperation with China, but certainly there should be another alternative cooperation between Italy and China, because the mutual requirement is substantial. So also, this so-called new 3 years plan could be a kind of alternative of this cooperation between China and Italy without the name of BRI. So we can understand the space for Italy, try to get some more cooperation with China, but at the same time, it should deal with the pressure from United States or some other Western countries on its policy towards China. Mm-hmm. But as we know, it's a kind of act of a balance. But we understand. I think it could be understandable. But I think now China is more confident about any kind of a cooperation, even without the name. But once we get some more and more substantial and mutual beneficial cooperation, so I think the future could be for benefits for both two sides. I think that's what China wants to do.
Yes, China has been talking and doing, basically following the principle of a win-win cooperation, a win for China, a win for the other parties here, Italy. Michele, media are talking about this possible Chinese EV makers investing in Italy, producing cars in Italy, and of course cooperation in the renewable sector, new energies. How likely is that, and will that be smooth? for both sides to move toward that direction?
It's an option, but and we would like to have Chinese company to invest greenfield into production of vehicles. The problem is that most likely Chinese company don't want to do greenfield, but they would like to maybe do an acquisition or share ownership of an existing Italian auto manufacturing. This would be completely opposed by Meloni, who does not want to sell a strategic asset to foreign buyers. So the choice is, given that the Chinese company cannot acquire an Italian company, they can only do greenfield. Now, when they do greenfield, cost, labor law, flexibility, I think I have to say, sadly, Hungary would win because China has already built a supply chain in Hungary. There's also CATL, battery manufacturing, that has opened up a factory there. So in a way, it would be easier and simpler for China to do it in Hungary, which, by the way, has a government like Orban that is in the Belt and Road, has never shown the hysterism of going in, going out, and try to reset the relationship. So I think from the point of view of Chinese, Hungary is, and I say, against the interests of my own country, a little bit more of a reliable partner for a Chinese company like BYD, Dongfang, or any others, especially for the labor law that in Italy are still a little bit more complicated and very different from the way the Chinese manufacturers operate around the world, which are used to much more flexible stuff that we do not have in Italy.
Francesco, a similar question for you. I mean, how competitive is Italy compared with other EU member countries like Hungary in terms of attracting Chinese investment in the EV sector?
Well, I think there are more restrictions. Hungary in Europe is a small country. Italy is a large country, one of the founding members. So one action in Hungary, it doesn't mean that Italy can replicate the same. I mean, Hungary can do that and then face difficulties within the EU. Italy will face far more difficulties in the EU if it behaves like Hungary. Italy, moreover, is the largest debtor to the European Central Bank. It has the single largest deficit in the EU. Therefore, with some 3,000 billion euros of debt. Therefore, without the support of the EU, immediately the Italian economy would collapse. We had, if interest rates were to raise on the Italian bonds, Italy, with the present debt and the present inflation, would of course go bust. Therefore, the room for maneuver of Italy in the EU is completely from Hungary, and plus all the complication that we said. So it's not just a simple issue. It is very complicated for both Italy and China, and therefore we shouldn't think about shortcuts, but about comprehensive solutions to an existential problem, and including the BRI. BRI,
right.
someone mentioned.
So Francesco, sorry for cutting off there. We have to stop there. With that, we come to the end for today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. Thank you for being with us. I'm Xu Qinduo. See you next time.